As I said earlier, my name is Jake Kohler. I'm the director of the Mullis Advanced Access Program and a member of our admissions committee at the Wharton School. And today I just have the pleasure to serve as a moderator to a conversation with our alumni. At Wharton, it's our hope that all members of our community feel seen and empowered to contribute as their best selves so that they can actualize their academic, professional, personal goals during the course of their MBA experience. And there's a lot of research that's done both at Wharton and even externally, where we know that a sense of belonging is really important to being part of a greater community and how that improves your motivation, health, and happiness. It's actually, in many respects, some of the research that Dean Erica James had done throughout her career prior to her time as dean at the Wharton School. So we know that that we have a role to play in cultivating a healthy environment for you. And we also know that building a sense of belonging requires active effort and practice. So today is all about learning about that through our alumni themselves. So without further ado, I'm actually going to allow our alumni to introduce themselves. We'll start with Arthi, and then we'll go in Wharton graduate order.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Arthi Sarirajin. I graduated from Wharton 10 years ago in 2011. Jake, do you want me to go into my professional background and everything here?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Sounds good. So yeah, graduated in 2011 from the Wharton School. Prior to Wharton, I was an investment banker at Deutsche Bank. I spent about 4.5 years there on the structured products team, working on securitized products, primarily mortgage-backed securities and credit card securitization. Started that in 2005, coming out of undergrad at the University of Chicago, where I studied economics. And I really wanted to get into finance and learn the world of finance through for both purposes of building a tangible skill set that I could then leap off of, but also understanding the capital markets. So going into structured products and being a part of a capital markets team kind of enabled me to do both. As I was building my career there, which was a great foundation for what was to come, I was sort of having a lot of thoughts about wanting to take financial market solutions and apply them to social problems. This is coming off the back of kind of my upbringing as first generation Indian American growing up in New Jersey, where I had the opportunity to benefit from my parents who immigrated here in pursuit of the American dream, but also having family in India who did not have that privilege, and wanting to figure out how to create solutions and economic equality. I realized as I lived in New York City and got to know my neighborhood more and more that these problems were not just in places in developing world, but actually existed in my backyard. So I wanted to pivot slightly into the world of impact investing. So in 2008, when I decided to apply to graduate school, that word did not really exist, impact investing. People were really kind of telling me to go into microfinance and things of that sort, which I thought were really interesting. But the one school that was talking about impact was the Wharton School. And so I thought it was really interesting the way that they were looking at baking into the curriculum, social impact, impact investing, the idea of bringing economic equality and capitalizing undercapitalized, overlooked communities and baking that into the curriculum. And I thought, if I'm interested in this, I should go here. I was fortunate enough to get in. I went to the Wharton School, started in 2009, and that led to a journey of me meeting with several alum over the years. And over the 2 years I was there to kind of figure out where I could fit in the ecosystem. I was fortunate enough to meet an alum of Wharton named Bobby Turner in my first year as part of the Wharton Social Impact Club, in which I was pretty active. And that then led to me learning more about the work Bobby was doing in the world of impact investing, and convinced him to hire me after I graduated the Wharton School, and I moved to Los Angeles, which is where I've been now for the past 10 years. So over 10 years, I worked with Bobby, and we ended up starting the Turner Impact Capital, which is an impact investment firm focused on providing real estate development solutions across education, healthcare, and workforce housing. I helped to build the firm over the course of the 10 years, became a managing partner and a managing director in 2018. And then very recently, early this year, made the very difficult decision of leaving Turner Impact to join BlackRock. So I've currently been at BlackRock for about 5 months, and I decided to join BlackRock to help lead a new fund that is focused on investing through a racial equity lens. So it's called the BlackRock Impact Opportunities Fund, and it's a fairly new initiative, but it's the idea is to invest in undercapitalized racial and ethnic minority communities, primarily Black, Latinx, and Native American communities across the United States, to help capitalize folks who have just not seen that or been able to benefit from institutional capital in the past. So really excited about the work that we're doing here, and I really feel like had it not been for the decision to go to Wharton and to sort of really lean into the great work that was being done there, and the support system that I was able to benefit from, that, you know, I'm not sure I would be here. So very, very grateful for the experience, and always grateful to pay it forward and give back, and looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arthi. I can't wait to learn more about your experience as we move forward. Linda, do you mind introducing yourself next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jake, for having me, and thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm Linda Liu. I graduated in 2015, so 6 years ago at this point. Similar to Arthi, I also grew up in an immigrant family here in Queens, New York, originally born in Montreal. So for all of you Canadians out there, my special shout out to you all around the world. Prior to Wharton, I started my career out in investment banking in the middle of the financial crisis. I remember that I sat in my cube, and it was my second week on the job, and you all may not remember this, but Lehman Brothers fell apart, Bank of America bought Merrill Lynch, and I'm sitting there thinking, do I make poor life choices? In hindsight, it was a fantastic experience during those times of turmoil. I learned a ton. It was one of those experiences where you got to learn a lot in a very limited amount of time, and ascend a learning curve in a skill set that I didn't have, especially coming from a liberal arts background. So I did that for a couple of years before I decided to apply to business school. And that was, you know, a combination of wanting to transition over to the buy side, in addition to just wanting a chance for personal development. I think there are very few opportunities that you have in life to really just focus on yourself, and like really take 2 years to focus on how you want to be better and how you can be, you know, your fullest selves and everything that you want to accomplish, like going forward. So I took the opportunity to go to Wharton, majored in finance and management during my time there. And right now I am a vice president at Blackstone in their hedge fund group. So my role is to go out and source the next generation of investing talent, help partner with them, and then hopefully help them to scale over time. So really excited to be here with all of you today. And, you know, similar to Arthi, I wouldn't be where I am today without Wharton, without the community that I built up at Wharton. And I would say that also the network that you build at Wharton, I found to be a lot more helpful nowadays, like call it like a few years out, because people are a lot more targeted in what they're doing. So everyone's like always able to share, you know, substantive information. Like, you know, like during your time there at Wharton, it might feel a little bit nebulous, like what the networking is for. I definitely got that sentiment. I knew I made a ton of friends and I loved my time there, but from a pure commercial perspective of, okay, like how is this return on investment going to be worth it down the line? Like you definitely, I can attest to the fact that you see it. even like a couple of years out of school as you're going into your respective industries and you're helping each other out.
Thanks so much, Linda. We're certainly, over the course of this year, we've been very excited to announce that we exceeded the Wharton alumni population is over 100,000 living alumni too. But what you said, it's that number is not even as significant as the accessibility to it. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I look forward to hearing more about that. Josh, do you mind going next? Oh, Josh, you're muted right now.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Wang. I'm graduated from the Wharton School in 2019. Luckily right before the COVID. So had a little bit of time to travel around the world. Not to rub it in, but build some good memories when I was there at the Wharton School. And then to echo, Arthi and Linda, it's a great experience for the 2 years, and similar to, their situation, it's sort of, for me, taking a break from my previous job and, spend 2 years in the MBA school, one of the best school in the world, and really kind of build a relationship and, learn as much as I can, and kind of making friends around the world, right? So a little bit background about myself. So before Wharton, I was in consulting, basically doing, operational sort of advising to financial services. And part of my job is traveling around to the client site, working with them, Monday, Thursday, and kind of fly back over the weekend. And then over the time, I sort of get tired of traveling and decided that I want to kind of settle down a little bit more and kind of build more expertise rather than going a little too broad. So I made the decision at that point to apply to a graduate school, particularly the MBA program. And luckily I got in at Wharton. And I was thinking that I want to do finance. So my major at Wharton really focusing on taking as many finance classes as possible, and also, travel to as many places as possible. So it's probably the one of the few programs in the world that allows you to marry those, like what the best of both worlds, right? So I got to travel to Antarctica, which is the highlight of my Wharton career. So it's great memory there. And I knew that I wanted to do something more finance oriented. So I, recruited for investment banking, got a job with a firm called Evercore. So I'm currently working at Evercore Menlo Park out of the California Tech Group. So that's a little short history compared to Arthi and Linda, and I'm kind of mesmerizing listening to them. And like, hopefully one day I would be able to, provide more insight and sort of like get to that point in your career where, be able to leverage the Wharton network to build something more lasting and meaningful for my career as well.
Thanks so much, Josh. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Oscar, I'd love if you introduce yourself as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Oscar. I just graduated this spring, so the youngest of the bunch here, but really appreciate the opportunity to chat today. Before Wharton, I went to Stanford where I studied economics and industrial engineering. I then worked for Google, first in the US, and then I eventually worked in Asia Pacific, in Hong Kong and Shanghai. At Wharton, I majored in entrepreneurship as well as operations. During Wharton, I was really involved with our entrepreneurship club, our tech club. I was able to TA a class for Adam Grant on org behavior. I was able to go on a global immersion program to the Middle East, and was also really involved with our sports communities across hockey, volleyball, and tennis. I'm really excited to chat with you all today and to get the discussion going.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Oscar. So as I suggested right at the top of the program, I'm going to share or start the conversation with a couple questions around belongingness, around the communities in which our alumni found themselves and contributed within. But this conversation and this program is designed to allow your questions as prospective students to influence what we talk about. So at any point, please feel free to share questions in the chat, and we'll try to take as many of those as we can over the course of the rest of this hour. But to kick us off, I would love for at least several of you on the alumni panel to describe what belongingness means to you, and then specifically, in what spaces did you feel that sense or find that sense of belongingness at Wharton in the community?
I can kick it off, Jake. As I said, Jake, you mentioned definitely an interesting point at the beginning of your introduction about bringing your best selves to a certain place. I think it's not only bringing your best self to a certain place, but bringing your complete self to a setting. I know that, at least for myself, like it's definitely really hard to separate and segregate who I am at work and who I am personally. I think that those two are definitely very, very integrated. And, you know, as you think of yourselves as students, right, it's definitely really hard to separate who you are in the classroom and who you are outside of the classroom, who you are at a certain party and who you are outside of the party. So I think that belongingness is essentially being able to bring your best selves and your complete selves to a certain setting. And I think a lot of that is being able to create a judgment-free zone where you can be authentic. And at the end of the day, like ultimately at Wharton, I know that from my experience there are structures in place that foster that. I know that I don't know about the rest of my panelists here, but the learning team construct is one where for the first semester, you basically take all of your classes with your cohort, and with your cohort, you work on team projects with a learning team that you get set up with, and it's essentially a safe space for you to try out whatever skills that you really want to try out, right? Like I remember we had somebody who was a Oscar film producer, actually like won an Oscar in my learning team, and he wanted to work on his quant skills. And like the rest of us had come from, finance and consulting backgrounds. And he said, like, I really want to work on this. Like, you guys have come from that background. Can you help me out, right? Can I take charge of all the quantitative exercises on the team project? And it was a good opportunity for him to do that. Because, like there are, leadership fellows in place, there are professors in place that actually like foster that type of environment where people, if you want to take risks in order to grow, in order to build a certain skill set, like you absolutely can. And I know that during my time there too, I don't know if it still exists, but we each got assigned an executive coach, which I found to be extremely helpful. Talk about somebody who was assigned to you personally to give you, call it a judgment-free, safe space to grow, so that, again, you can really, I felt that I really learned a lot about myself and really owned like who I was. There were certain flaws that I thought I had that like really weren't flaws at the end of the day after going through the whole executive coaching program. So I would say that like there are definitely structures in place, and above and beyond that, like the student environment was just like great. I made a ton of friends coming out of the Wharton program. It was, I remember at my wedding, we had like literally, I think it was like 3 tables filled with like Wharton people, and you can always like be sure that the bar is like stocked, the bar is like finished, and there's always people on the dancing floor. So like it's like friends that you definitely like do make for life there, that like create that space for you to to belong, and for you to be your best and most authentic persona.
Yeah, I would add to what Linda had said about being able to bring your full self. I think for me, belonging is being able to be vulnerable and being able to have a lifelong support network. So on the topic of being vulnerable, I was really involved with the McNulty Leadership Program. And I was also involved with the Executive Coaching Program, which was by far one of my favorite second-year experiences. But I was also involved with a program called P3, which stands for Purpose, Passion, and Principles. And over 6 weeks, was able to meet with 6 of my peers, and we just discussed everything about life, touchy-feely, about our goals and purposes in life. And I thought that was a really great moment to just, in a very psychologically safe zone and space, to be vulnerable. I would also add that belonging for me is also that lifelong support network. So I was also involved with a club called Wang, which stands for the Wharton Association of Asian American MBAs. And that was a major pillar of community that I actively sought. And I think within many different cultural and affinity groups, even in professional settings, a lot of these clubs have families or equivalents where you're put into these groups of both second year and first year students. And I think when you become a second year student, you're also given the opportunity to pay it forward as well. So I think in the spirit of belonging, I think Wharton for me, Wharton has given me a lot, but it has also given me the opportunity to give back, pay it forward, but also forge that sense of community that I got as a first year.
I'll jump in, and that was really well said, Oscar. I had written down vulnerable as well when I heard the word belonging, but I think you covered that really well. And it's great to see that there is executive coaching. I wish that existed when I was a second year. I could have, I think we had to sort of apply to get in, but it's great to see the evolution coming from, the experiences of some of the older alum. But I think for belongingness for me, when I started, and I think not dissimilar to most people coming out of, a pretty rigorous finance world, where you're sort of really kind of myopic in your day-to-day in a lot of ways. It was a little bit scary to kind of step into a world where, you were kind of put with people with all different types of professional backgrounds. It's also super exciting to be in that kind of world, because if you allow yourself to, you can learn so much, and you make friends with people from all over the world who have just incredible experiences that they are so willing to share, and vice versa. And I think, I started my first year at Wharton in 2009, the same year that Adam Grant, who Oscar mentioned earlier, it was his first year teaching, and I had the privilege of having him as my very first management teacher during the right before classes started. And he really kind of helped, and I think it's emblematic of a lot of the professors at Wharton, but he helped shape sort of this intellectual curiosity, and to embrace it, and to really ask each other questions in personal settings, but also encouraging people to speak up in class, and kind of get back into that rhythm that you may have been out of for 4, 10, 15 years because you haven't been in a school setting, and to start learning about who you are. Because I think you might come in with one sense of, this is who I am, this is my identity, but what I really appreciated coming out of Wharton were all the incremental things that I learned about myself, the new interests that I realized that I had, the new passions that I realized I wanted to lean into. One of the things I was really involved with was the Wharton Graduate Association, and I was on the board of WGA representing student life, and I thought that was a really great way to start thinking about sort of this life of the mind of the student. And we're all professional adults going back into the world of the professional world in a couple of years. But while we're here, let's try to make this place as inclusive, as great for every single person here as possible. So that was a really that was a great thing for me to be able to give back to in my second year. And also Wharton Women in Business. So I was the co-president of Wharton Women in Business my second year as well. And that was an incredible way to just really bond with other incredible women at Wharton who, coming out of the world of finance, I didn't have role models that did that and provided that support system. So to be able to create and foster a system and create infrastructure for Wharton Women in Business, where there could be that support system, where we could lean into reaching out to women alum, and also just educating, the entire school as to what the kind of, what the needs were, was a really, important experience, but also, again, gave me that sense of, okay, this is something that I've always been interested in. I just never knew it and never knew how to channel it. And here's an incredible way to do that in a safe space with people around you who really want you to succeed.
all those comments are just so powerful, and in many respects they allude to like they break some of the perceptions maybe people even have of Wharton. So some of the questions I was going to follow up with, I think you started covering, and I see that there's a couple really heavy but meaningful questions that have come up. So I'm actually going to pose one of these. It's directed to you, Oscar, and Annie. I really appreciate your question. Oscar, if you don't mind sharing, the question that Anna poses is, or prompting, is that you'd love to hear about whether there was any sort of dialogue on campus around the recent increase in anti-Asian sentiment, certainly that happened over the past year and in your final year at Wharton.
Yeah, I think this hits home really personally. During my second year in March, as many of you know, around the time of the Atlanta tragedy and shootings, this is a major reckoning on campus, and it was even more difficult in a pandemic environment where mostly everyone was taking virtual classes. Otherwise, people were in Philadelphia in their own small social pods. But I think one thing that I'm really most proud of is actually our WAM group, our Asian American group on campus, hosted almost close to 20 different advocacy and identity discussions across the Wharton community first and second year. Any topics around Asian American representation to violence against Asian Americans, a variety of different topics that really hit home, and it allowed people that were both in the club as well as those in other affinity and culture groups to come together to have these discussions over dinner, a meal, over coffee, or over at someone's home in a safe environment. And we were able to chat about these issues. So I think what I enjoyed about it the most was that I was able to sense an enthusiasm for people to openly talk about it, but also a space for people to reflect and to also process what was happening. Personally, I mean, I'm still a little bit in shock of what has happened over the past year, but at least I know that I have peers who are willing to have that conversation. And, you know, oftentimes we don't have answers to everything. So, but I think that I like how a lot of my classmates leaned in and were willing to have that conversation, whether or not they were Asian American or in a different group as well.
Thanks so much, Oscar. And I want to build upon some of that because certainly what happened the past year is noteworthy and like requires such intentional thought and sharing of experience. But all of you were so involved in the Wharton experience, whether through McNulty, WGA, across multiple organizations, academic spaces. And I'd just be curious to expand upon kind of similar notions of what ways did you find yourself contributing to that sense of equity, diversity, inclusion in some of the different spaces you may have found yourself. And you hinted at some of those, but I would love if any of you wanted to build upon that a little bit further.
Yeah, I can take this one. I think, you know, one of my best experiences at Wharton is really be involved with the storytelling club. And you know, we took the opportunity. I think, you know, what I resonated with the most from what, you know, been shared on the panel is really being vulnerable. And the storytelling is really a place where you put yourself out there in a small setting and be able to tell your story in the most honest voice, and you know, let yourself be heard and kind of share that story and the journey with your classmate as well in a very non-judgmental, you know, environment. And I found that incredibly empowering in the way that you can, you know, for example, in my case, I shared my story from, you know, growing up in Vietnam, migrating to the U.S. with my family, you know, how our families are, you know, struggle at the beginning to really integrate into the society, and you know how I started at, you know, speaking no English word to, you know, get to where I am now. You know, those are things that kind of make you feel very, very vulnerable openly. But then the environment is really allow you to, you know, really stay true to yourself and kind of find those small corners, small groups where you kind of feel that you can safely and openly share your story and kind of grow from that and kind of hearing from other people's story as well, and collectively learning from each other, right? So I think, getting back to the question, I feel like that really helped define who I am partially, right? As part of the experience that I have at Wharton, and that's definitely something that help us bond with each other. Like we still talk. There's a group me that we leverage while at Wharton, and it's still going on. Every day I got tons of messages. So there are groups that we keep in touch more regularly, and there are people that you don't. But you'll be amazed at, for example, in my job, people reaching out, and there are two sides of the buy side and the sell side, and then it's incredibly small world that you see people like your classmate, you encounter it on the other side of the table, and also people who work with you in co-advisor role and different capacity. That's just to say that it happens at the macro and the micro sense. So just embrace the moment when you're at Wharton and really lean in, take the opportunity to open yourself up and learn as much as possible. And that's sort of something that I feel applicable to me during my time at the Wharton School.
I'm happy to share a little bit. I was an admissions fellow my second year of Wharton, which meant that I got to kind of work with the admissions office and be kind of the first screener when it came to applications from prospective MBA students. And I thought that was a really, I really was excited to do that, was really privileged to be chosen. And I thought that was a really interesting entree into the world of, thinking about DEI as it relates to the composition of your student body, how you think about people's experiences and how they tell their stories, what you take away from it, how you want to think, how you want to build this incredible community of such diverse people with diverse experiences, rich experiences from around the world. And it was probably one of the hardest, I would say it's like harder than any class I took, because you feel a lot of weight of kind of being that first screener. But I think that the thoughtfulness that the admissions office puts behind that, and what I was sort of given a little peek behind the curtain on during my time as an admissions fellow, I really felt like I was contributing to, starting to think about or thinking about it in that way, and also being able to provide my own insights. So it was a very much a kind of a two-way mutual discussion. You could tell that everyone really, the admission side really wanted to understand how we as students thought about the community and wanted to kind of continue shaping it. So it didn't just come down to the numbers. There was a lot more thoughtfulness behind it, and I felt like that was just a really kind of a great way to include the student body into such an important process. So I was really happy to be able to play a role there. And then another sort of on the other side of things, on the got to travel a ton at Wharton, and I really genuinely hope that things are in a position when everyone is at business school where you get to kind of do that again. But I thought that the ability to kind of jump onto different immersion, travel experiences, or even the social travel that occurs, whether it's, the ski trips or the trips to, various parts of the world where different students from those parts of the world are leading those trips. You get to really meet people, again, continue to meet, and if you're open and allow yourself to be open to kind of hear about people's stories and experiences, you can really take a lot away from that. So one of the greatest experiences was I traveled to Southeast Asia my first year during winter break, and I think I knew one person before I went on this trip, and there were 20 of us. And coming out of that, realized that I really needed to open myself up to different groups, different small groups that had formed because of interest, but took my role in WGA because I wanted to build more connectivity between the various groups, and was able to sort of launch some initiatives my second year to be able to actually, bring structure around that. But I think it's about listening. It's about, creating those connections, and then really, again, it's a safe space to be able to really do whatever it is you want to do. And especially with ideas like that, I think there's a lot of support. And you find quickly that a lot of people have ideas like that, and they're willing to step in and help you do it and implement it, and even you can create, before you know it, there's a whole new, seat on the board of WGA just dedicated to that. So I really think, again, leaning into that was a huge benefit for myself.
So like Arthi, I was also an admissions fellow my second year as well. And during my time there, I believe it was probably the second or third year where they started the team-based discussion as part of the interview process. And I personally just felt it to be really empowering that you get to sit on the other end of the table and help to shape the next generation of Wharton. And really ask yourself, is this somebody that I want to have in my my Wharton community, somebody that I would want to have as a classmate. And I think that ultimately Wharton's one of those places that have been surprised time and time again how student-led and how student-driven it is. Students really do have a voice on the campus, on the university. And it's even when you want to go and start a club or something, you really have the latitude to bring that initiative to light. Josh had mentioned the storytelling club. I think that was actually created by one of my classmates in my year. She came up with the idea, and she's like, okay, Anita is her name, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go and do this. And lo and behold, you found a group of people that were also interested in it, and it became an official club 6 years later that still exists, right? And it's same for conferences as well. I don't know if the People Analytics Conference still exists at Wharton, but it's one of those things where somebody in my year said, hey, this would be really cool. What if we, create a conference about data and how to, analyze the people and data at the same time. And she created a process, found a bunch of people that were interested in it, and was able to build something that was lasting. So I've, again, been time and time again impressed by how student-led and student-driven the community at Wharton is. And you really can bring whatever initiative that you want, that you put your mind to light. It's something that's very realistic to happen.
I would also add to that point that I think in addition to the student body, I think we have incredible administration as well. So when I was at Wharton, Dean James started my second year, and she's been a phenomenal leader. I've been able to grab lunch with her a few times and actually talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues with her directly with other students. In addition, Eddie Banks-Crossan, who leads the Office of Student Life, has been incredibly receptive to issues around first generation, low-income students. And a few years ago, there was a new club called Return on Equality that was started, as well as Wharton Male Allies, clubs that really do support equality and diversity in the workplace. And I think that's kind of where I think it's more than just lip service. I think our administration has taken active steps to kind of listen to students. And I think to Linda's point, there have been a number of student-led initiatives that have gone from an idea to being actually becoming a club to in recruiting students and passing it down with every single class.
It's amazing, the thoughts that you're sharing, how they're hitting really important themes that are spread across multiple different questions and thoughts that are coming through the questions from our audience, and then that solutions orientation to the community, the impact that students are able to make and have that voice with administration, I think is so powerful. So I appreciate all those words. I'm going to take a quick step, just being mindful of time. And there's a really great question that Allison just posed that's on a slightly different topic or trend theme, at least. So Allison poses that there's some research that shows that Asian Americans are underrepresented in senior leadership roles. So she asks, have you encountered any bamboo ceilings as you've advanced through your career? And if so, how did you think Wharton has helped you prepare for those challenges?
like, why don't I take a stab at this? The bamboo ceiling, definitely tons of research out there, something that, I do think that exists in the workplace. Like, as an Asian person that grew up in an immigrant family, like, you are taught to just work hard, put your head down and work hard. The reality of it is that working hard only gets you so far up the career ladder, especially within a large organization. I think, after a certain point, there are a lot of other soft skill sets that come into play that would help determine your path forward and determine your success. So I think, at least for me, like, Wharton definitely helped me to build my communication skills at the end of the day, because I think that ultimately Asians it's another stereotype. Like, your stereotype to be really good worker bees, your stereotype to be really quantitative. And I think that, like, knowing that bias in the back of my head at work, I try to make sure that I am not too, like, not too fazed by it, B, making sure that I get a breadth of opportunities that's just not very quantitative driven, but also opportunities to speak up in meetings, opportunities to structure your thoughts appropriately, to be able to present to audiences. And I think that I believe the Speaking Fellows program might still be around at Wharton nowadays. I'm looking at Oscar or Josh, who's been there more recently than I at the time, but that was really helpful. I did not enjoy public speaking before Wharton. It's not something that I absolutely love doing, but it's something that I can put up with, I can tolerate, like, nowadays. If I had to go in front of a room and present, like, after doing it at Wharton, like, so many times, and getting feedback from your classmates, from professors and whatnot. And I also had a chance to also teach an undergrad class as well that put my speaking skills to the test during those 2 years. Like, nowadays it's something where it's like, it doesn't bother me so much in terms of doing. And I think that comes a long way, not saying that we're absolutely going to conquer the bamboo ceiling, but every little step of it does help.
I would just add that I think the network and the friend, I wouldn't even call them a network. My friends that I made at Wharton, men, women, all ethnicities, living all over the world now, doing all sorts of various really cool things, have really helped me navigate this. I lean on that group for, and we lean on each other as we're sort of navigating the corporate world a lot. I think we're all seeing all sorts of different challenges. A lot of my good friends from Wharton are doing some really impressive work in the world of DEI and research that has been referenced here specifically. And so just being able to kind of pick up the phone or shoot a text and have, even if you haven't spoken with the person in 3-4 years, there is a sense of, you've got this bond from what the experience you went through, but also, again, this intellectual curiosity. And I think everyone wants to help each other out at the end of the day. I think that there might, there's some, there's stigmas out there on competitiveness and et cetera. And there's certainly that. And I think that there's like a healthy sense of competition that helps us all grow. But I will say, I think as it relates to sort of me navigating my career, times when I've felt like I've hit ceilings, whether it's, for a variety of reasons, I really leaned on that group of friends, that network from Wharton. In some cases, even professors from Wharton, professors who have published on interesting organizational psychology matters that I, just read and thought, hey, they've got some interesting ideas around how to think about your career, how to think about organizational change. Let me reach out. And I always get an email back, and it's always super helpful. And there's always this sense of, we're part of a community. We might be 100,000 deep, but there's certainly a sense of community. And I think that that's been really priceless in terms of helping me navigate that. And I plan on continuing to lean into that as I continue down my professional future.
Yeah, I just gonna add that even if you are an introvert, there's a value add, from your, where you're from, what you can contribute to, the larger sort of organization that you belong to. So don't feel like, you have to be outspoken to really, make your voice heard. But one thing that I agree with Linda and kind of see throughout my career as well is really about stepping out of your comfort zone, as much as you can, and really try different things that kind of make you feel uncomfortable. Because by only by doing that, then you growing, right? You actually being exposed to different environment and kind of see how it help you shape who you are, and you're gonna discover a lot of things that you did not imagine you could do. But by only trying, that that you actually could do it, right? It helps you kind of like be more brave in your working environment, right? And as much as we don't want it to be, like a little bit like a silent contributor is still value into society, but adding a little, more vocal contribution certainly helps make your points heard a little louder. And an Asian person, I kind of see that, because sometimes in the meeting you sort of like stay silent and kind of listening in more, although you sort of get the point, but people don't give you the credit because you on the listening mode. But don't be aggressively like try go out there and they take the airtime and collect, do a lot of talking, but doesn't have that content. So I always say to myself, wherever I speak up, try to have more content, try to see, how you can add more value, rather than just for the sake of talking and kind of making sure that people know that I'm there. And it's been, incredibly helpful if you keep thinking in that direction, like how do I contribute? How do I make my points across? It's gonna be very, very challenging at the beginning. I'll tell you, that scared the heck out of me. I'm shaking, but it's getting better over time. It's like things you try the first time and you haven't done it, but it is something that we are like wired to try and kind of be, mastery of the skill, only if you try. Thank you.
So I'm recognizing that there's less than 10 minutes to go, and there's been a bunch of really great questions that we're not going to get to. So what I might do here is maybe pose 2 options for each of you to address, like to kind of close out. And one will either be like, if you have any parting advice, you've given so many wonderful insights about the community, and I even think associated with that, a lot of thoughts that can move forward as for anybody who's interested in Wharton Business School or just throughout their careers. So I'll pose either any advice you'd want to share that you don't think you've provided earlier, and if you can do so in like a 2-minute span each. If there's a favorite time or most challenging time at Wharton that you think you would want to identify as well. That's a lot to give you, about 120 seconds to include, so no pressure. But would love if each of you had like some parting words before we wrap up.
I can kick it off. So I think you are all probably considering business school in the near future. I'd encourage you all to just adopt a growth mindset as you think about your MBA experiences, whether it's at Wharton or not. When I came to Wharton, I had written on my application my goals and what I wanted to get out of my 2 years. But shortly 6 months into, or maybe even 3 weeks into my orientation at Wharton, I started to pivot and I started to adopt and experiment and try new things. So I'd encourage you to just have your goals in mind, but be flexible and be open-minded enough such that you could use your summer to try something new and eventually do something different than what you had written about in your application. And then I'll briefly touch on my favorite time, which is in my second year, I decided to take a leap of faith and I signed up for dance studio. And because of the pandemic, we were not able to perform on stage live, but we were able to record music videos. And I was really proud of my Bolly Funk number that I was able to do, and learned they're an arduous process over a couple months.
Thanks, Oscar. Josh, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to go next?
Yeah, then I'm on the spot. Okay. I think I don't know how to structure my talk, but really things that I would encourage people to try is, don't frame yourself in certain, type personality, like here who I am. Kind of go in with the open mindset, and that's how you get out more if you come in with the open mindset. Like, don't assume that, oh, I got to do this, and that. I don't know what I wrote in my application, but I did the opposite. And I'm not sure the audience that I'm talking to, like whether you already admit it, but don't feel like you have to fit in a certain personality that you feel like you are that person. But like let the process play it out. Think about this as a self-discovery process. And you'll be amazed that, like, if you try different things, it's gonna be more rewarding experience. Don't stick to your community. People, Asian talk easier, but always extend yourself a little bit more. Don't need to try on the first day, but take the opportunity and really find the right moment to immerse yourself. I think immersive is another word that you're gonna hear a lot at Wharton, and I think it's true. But you got to take initiative to really make it happen. And as long as you do that, it kind of happen organically. You feel every day, I didn't know that I could talk to that person. I didn't know that, I gonna find my girlfriend, at the Wharton, and it's actually happening, right? So let it play itself, but come in with, a blank mindset, and then you come out with some lesson learned and kind of like a lot of wisdom.
Linda, do you want to take next?
Sure. I think along the same veins as what Oscar and Josh are both saying. Like, don't be afraid to take risks. Honestly, if there's that mountain that you wanted to climb, do it. You can find 40 other. It's the only time in your life you can find 40 other people to do it with you. If you wanted to go on a trek to the Masai Mara, do it. It's the only time in life, again, that you can find 40 people. Like, once you're out in the workplace, trust me, as somebody who's been a few years out, it is really hard to organize something for a week even with 5 people. So literally business school is the only time in your life where you can find and coordinate 20 people to do whatever you wanted to do. Dance studio, something I also did during my time there, never tried out Bhangra before, did that for the first time ever with a whole host of other people. So again, whatever you wanted to do, don't be afraid to take the risk. If there's honestly, you're not gonna regret anything coming out of it. What's the worst that can happen, right? There really isn't much. And really take the time, I think, to embrace your classmates too. You probably see from the webinar here that you have a huge international community. It's definitely reflected in your class at Wharton. I know that before Wharton, my network was literally just finance in New York City. And I was really astonished that there was an entire world out there filled with people in different industries all around the world. So no matter where I go today, there's definitely somebody to call up in whatever country that I'm in. So definitely take the time to embrace and get to know your classmates too. These are lifelong friendships that you'll make there.
And Arthi, love for you to close us out.
Sure. Yeah. I'll just say a quick thing on the advice, because I think all the advice that's been given so far is wonderful. But I would say, think twice before you say no to an offer. And what I mean by that is, if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, do you want to grab dinner tonight? I'm really interested in learning more about XYZ. I would encourage you to, even if you're tired or whatever, figure it out and do it, because I think those are where you, again, after those 2 years, it's really hard to find the time to do that. And then life gets, crazy after you graduate and as life goes on. So to find those moments where you can connect, both in groups, but also one-on-one. So, and don't be afraid to ask someone to take some time to have a chat with you one-on-one, because I think those one-on-one connections are really important. That's when you learn a lot about people, and everyone around you has incredible, unique experience that you're in a special place that you get to leverage that. And I would say my favorite time at Wharton was traveling across New Zealand for 3 weeks, during winter break, in my middle of my second year, and going skydiving with 10 of my closest friends from Wharton. Again, something that I would have never done before. I've never jumped out of a plane before, but I can't, advise that you do that necessarily. But I would just say, again, it goes along the lines of trying new things, stepping out of your comfort zone, taking risks, obviously, wise risks, but taking risks, and really making the most of those couple of years.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you again, Arthi, Linda, Josh, Oscar, your insights, your thoughtfulness, your willingness to balance and to share some heavy pieces and some really rewarding and positive items too, means the world. So for everybody who's was able to attend today, if your questions weren't answered, please know you can be in touch with our team, with our admissions fellows. You can sign up for virtual coffee chats over the course of the remainder of this term. We're going to host a variety of different sessions for the weeks and months to come as well, whether they're application tips, which actually kick off tomorrow morning, or any other programming. We want to be resources to you. Arthi, Linda, Josh, Oscar, thank you so much again. Very grateful for your time. Thank you all for participating. And I'll look forward to engaging and connecting and learning about all of you more in the weeks and months to come.